My name's Guy, I'm CEO and co-founder of Jam. We're going to talk to you a little bit today about how computer vision and gamification can be used to de-risk drivers in real time, to make them safer and have less chances of having accidents. We're thrilled about the potential of this technology to change the world, and we brought a guest with us here to drive around with me in Singapore as we demo the technology for real, and we talk a little bit about how game theory and game systems can be used with drivers in the real world.
Hello.
It's been a while.
It's been a while indeed. Alright, cool. So we're taking you for a nice little drive and a bit of a chit chat. Do you want to introduce yourself to all of our viewers?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. I'm Ian Gregory. I'm a game designer, and I've pretty much been making games most of my life. I enjoy, creating fun for everyone. And I've been running game companies for a majority of my time. But the last couple of years, I've been doing consulting and helping companies put game design in their engagement cycles.
Okay, what got you involved in games kind of from the beginning of your career?
I think it was Dungeons and Dragons, and the fact that no one ever comes on time for Dungeons and Dragons. So I had to create little things to entertain the people that would come by already, who were early, right? And that's kind of like where it started. And from then on, a bunch of friends and I decided that, we could actually create something bigger and better of this. And that's what we did, yeah.
Man, we should do that in schools.
Yeah, we did it in school. Started in school.
I mean, obviously with Jam, we focus on drivers.
Yeah.
And insurance has talked for a long time about gamifying insurance and getting people to more actively engage with things that are causing them risk.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of pros and cons to these types of systems that you've seen?
Yeah, I think majority of the time, I will firstly disconnect towards gamification and game design, right? Because what gamification really is a reward system, right? Do an action, get a prize, and that it's just a very small part of game design. There's a lot more involved rather than just rewards. And one of the problems with a reward system is that you can kind of do the math and decide whether any action is worth worth your effort, right? And the goal of good game design is to disconnect that and make sure that the things that you're doing has intrinsic value for itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of making the game, playing the game itself valuable rather than,
Yes.
I get this thing out of it.
Yeah, there's a social aspect of games, right? There's the observer effect. But more than anything else, there's actually the sense of control that's actually very important towards why people engage with games better than, say, doing any kind of rote task, right? Choice becomes a very big part of it. And how that translates, right, is that by giving your users or your gamers a bunch of tools and having them decide how they want to use those tools in what way, right, to achieve their goals, right? The IKEA effect kicks in, right? They built that experience for themselves, and that involvement, that ownership, right, is a big part of what makes game design within any kind of engagement, right, so much more powerful than just going, if you do the thing I want you to do, I'll give you a piece of candy, right? That only takes you so far. You've got 1 million users, 2 million users. We're not going to be giving everyone a PS5 or an Xbox anytime soon, right? That's not going to happen.
It'd be nice.
It would be nice though. So if you guys can figure that out, I would love one. I'll give you my address by the end of this ride.
Okay, so yeah, that's slightly beyond budget.
So the thing about games, right, I talk about control, but the other big one is empowerment. The whole idea of you have control and you never feel small or weak unless that's part of the game design. Unless you're playing a horror game, right, that really shouldn't be the thing that you're doing, right? So I think the best way I'll give you a really good example, World of Warcraft, right? So I'm sure everyone knows a little bit of what World of Warcraft is about. What they wanted to do was that they didn't want people playing all the time. So they would give you less experience points the longer you play. So functionally, they're punishing you for playing the game, right? So the designers went back and thought about it and go what we do instead is that if you leave your character in the tavern, right, we're going to give you a rest bonus because they're fresh, right, and you get more of this rest bonus by staying offline. So now I reward the time that you're spending offline versus punishing you for the time you spend online. But that's the kind of concepts that game design, right, can solve, right, towards getting behavior done right in a way that it feels positive. It feels as though they'll want to do it anyway, right? Because it's exactly the same thing. The amount of XP that the player could get, experience points the player could get, was exactly the same, right? But the narrative changed. the way it was received changed, right? And by applying that kind of thinking, right, into any kind of insurance engagement format, so it's not just about the reward, it's the narrative of what is my involvement in this, achieving this goal, right?
So far, like always with insurance, right? So like when I go buy insurance,
Yeah.
I put in my information if I've had any accidents before, so on and so forth, right? And then if I get essentially rewarded with no claims bonuses, right? If I haven't had an accident,
Right.
And then I go away and either my insurance goes up artificially because the price of insurance goes up, or I get something taken away from me because I've had an accident and now my insurance is sky high, right?
Correct.
And so it's all punishment based, and feels it's not really about me. It's kind of a punitive system, right?
Yes,
and so with that, how would you transform that as a process into something that is more engaging?
Well, see, we need to stop looking at it as an accident or not an accident, right? What makes for good driving is discipline and good habits. So the whole idea, right, is to create tasks or tools, right, that the user can mix and match, right, to change their day-to-day behavior, the minute-to-minute driving, into a much safer format. Checking your mirrors, using your signal when no one is looking, because you understand the value of it to yourself, right? And when people are around you, the value of it to your community as well, right? So it's about creating those kinds of tools, right? And the thing is that's the thing, right? It goes back to choice again. Do I want to take on these tools, right? And if a game can show you the importance of it or show you what could happen if you don't do it, right? That's where it becomes intrinsic. I'm doing it because I want it, not because you're going to give me a $5 Starbucks voucher.
Okay. So we can take out all of the prices?
They don't need to know all that.
We obviously create an environment where we see what the driver is doing.
Yeah.
We turn those into essentially mini games.
Yes.
Where we align the driver to the mini game, and then they become safer.
Yes.
And they have this very big reward system at the end. Is that the strongest way to do it, or do you think there's ways to improve on it?
So we talk about interruption moments, right? When do we interrupt? One of the perks, right, of the system that we have now, right, is that at the end of a drive or at the end of the day, we can provide them games that are in relation to the experience they had on the road as well. So what you've actually created, right, is the ability for people to actually self-reflect on their journey, right, and how they behaved or what was the thinking processes in a safer space outside of actually being in the car, to go like, the next time I want to be better at this. That's where we come in. That's where we figure out, right, how do we bridge that gap, right, of practice and perfection.
Yeah. So like, as an example of some of those games, right, we can have like what we do is we recognize the student in front of us, right? It's this motorbike. So if he just like slammed on the brakes at some point,
correct,
and then I needed to like react to him, right? This would be an example of one of those like hostile actors, right? So he would be essentially playing his own game, where his actions are now negatively impacting mine, right?
Right.
And so, should he be penalized, or should I be rewarded?
So you should be rewarded, because we don't know why he did it. Figuring out and giving them an excuse just so that for your own mental state you can kind of like pass through it, right, is important. So we should be rewarded for our ability, right, to be aware of what's going on, but we should never blame another person because we don't know what took them to that place.
So even if he's done something which hurts me,
yes,
it's not. He is not necessarily the one at fault from my perspective.
Yes.
I should be accountable to myself for how I reacted to that environment.
Yes, correct. There's so many things that could occur. There's so many variables on the road. To blame an individual other, right, to absolve yourself of your inability to react in time is unfair.
Yeah. I feel a bit bad when I was stalking this guy.
Yeah, that poor guy, right?
It's like, why is this guy following me?
So you should get him a $5 Starbucks voucher.
So when I drive, it's no longer about like I'm the best driver on the road, but I am the best driver I can be, and I am orientated.
Yeah. So a lot about game design, right? It's also about mastery, right? It's about collection of skills. So what it always boils down to, right, is growth, right? And growth needs to be created by action, right? So it is through the practice, right, that we see that. And I really do think, right, that as the data set becomes a lot bigger for JAMM, you can also tell people, like based on an average driver of, your same demographic, you're falling short a little bit, but we know how to get you there.
There's an interesting thing as well with games, that a game in a different context is just a test.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I'm speaking to drivers all everywhere really.
Yeah.
And a common theme here is that if they kind of feel pressured in a lot of scenarios where they feel they're being examined on how they drive, and it's very punitive.
Right.
And that, but which is functionally the same thing as what we do, which is just we tell you when you're good or bad, and there's consequences. But how you perceive a game can be transformative, right?
Yeah, so when enough people, right, reach that kind of mastery of self, right, then you also learn to trust the people on the road, right? Trust is a very big part. I mean, we're all putting ourselves in giant rushing metal boxes. When you zoom out and you're able to see, right, that kind of momentum shift, right, of safer driving occur, right? We are definitely opening ourselves to a much better experience on the road for everyone.
And how does that, do you think, change? If we look outside of Singapore, right? I mean, so I come from London. It's a bit more chaotic, in terms of like driving and driving styles. So I find it very orderly here. I go to somewhere like Bangkok, and I just terrifying, right?
Yes.
And so I would say that as a combative environment, where the way that you would kind of view driving as a kind of game or structure is radically different. How would this adjust from place to place?
You control what you have your hands on.
Yep.
It is your steering wheel and your feet, right? It allows
like
you.
my controller, for lack of a better.
Yeah, your controller, right? But all the NPCs around you, all the other people around you, you can't control what they do. You can signal to them, right, your intent, right, and how safe you are as a driver, right? But you don't know what they're going to do. It's choice and empowerment. I choose to drive well, right, and I have the ability to drive well, and I trust myself to drive well. When those things occur, right, you could put yourself in most places and you would survive.
What are kind of pitfalls there in terms of like presenting kind of these systems?
I think the most important thing is to, like I said, break it down into smaller tasks. It's also about highlighting to the driver, right, when they hit certain milestones in their ability, in their skill, right, to state that we congratulate you, you're making that much, a lot more progress, you're doing a lot better, right? And then telling them, sometimes maybe after a fact, that they've learned a way to do something safely that they didn't know they were learning until they've got practice for it. It's the Mr. Miyagi wax on, wax off mentality, right? Of I get you used to that discipline and functions of yourself, right? And then highlight to you, right, how that actually contributes to safer driving. So it's a mix and match, right? And here's the thing, right? Jam is going to get a lot of data, and that data can be translated for each user towards what weaknesses and strengths we know they have as drivers. Yeah, and that's something that I would love to see happen in the long term, because we can raise a whole generation of drivers with, because we have both data and the tools to get them into that sweet spot.
And there's no need for PS5s.
I would still like a PS5 though.
Yeah, so talking about like the non-player characters, right? So like the other guys, you've obviously got kind of like hostile and friendly,
yes,
like characters, right?
Yeah.
You've got people who are, let's call them conscientious members of the road, right? And they're not trying to cause you any trouble. And then you've got other people who are maybe less aware of you, right? Whether it's malicious or not is up to them. But does it not appear competitive? If someone comes out and just gets in my way or cuts me up, is that aggressive, or is that more about the system itself?
It's hard to take this apart without thinking about, as a Singaporean, right, what the culture is. We have this culture of not losing, right? It's this whole idea that, losing is bad, therefore we'll try and win, even though we don't even know what we're winning. We don't even know why we want to win. We're just told that we need to win, right? But when it comes to the road, right, the only thing you're kind of winning is time. And I'm not sure how it is in other countries, but at least in Singapore, the only thing you do is get to the next traffic light a little bit faster than the other guy, right? So I would say that,
like that car that sped past us.
Yeah, exactly, right? so I'm thinking more in terms of how do we zen out driving? How do we make sure that a safe journey is as important as your destination?
Well, I think this is where I'm meant to be dropping you off.
Hey, cheers, man! Thanks for the lift.
So yeah, it was really nice to give you a little drive around town, be your personal driver.
Yeah, it's always nice. Well, don't be a stranger. I'll catch up with you soon. Then.
Cool.
All right, cheers.
Oh, good.
All right, yep. Bye.
So a huge thanks to Ian for being such a gracious guest and not panicking as I drove him around. I was really nervous that I was going to embarrass myself or have an accident in front of the collective insurance community of Singapore, so thank God that didn't happen. If anyone wants to know more about what we're doing with Jam to use gamification and computer vision to really engage with drivers and change the way that they drive, feel free to reach out to us at one of our booths or just reach out online. Thanks.